What if a politician were bold enough to say, I'm going to put an initiative in effect that is not going to fix the problem now, but is going to be sustainable over future generations? That to me is bold. Not only that, but as we do this, we're going to create self-correcting mechanisms so that every year, every 2 years or whatever, we're going to look at how it's going and see if shifts need to be made, if different parts of the program either need to be taken away or changed or whatever the case may be. How about that kind of boldness? Can we get boldness like that? Welcome to the 37th episode of Love, Growth, and Narratives. I'm Frederick.
And I'm Tiffany.
In today's episode, we want to discuss, are there any quick fixes to society's problems? And one of the things that made me think about this was last year during the debates, and some of them was the presidential debates and some of the other, different debates where the moderators or some of the people asking questions would ask, what is it you're going to do on day one? As if, the person who's elected into office is going to, through the stroke of a pen, really make some monumental change over something that's been going on for decades, just really that quickly. And are we expecting too much too quickly? And so that's what I really wanted us to discuss today. Do we have unrealistic expectations for problems that have been going on for decades? But before we get started, I wanted to hand it over to Tiffany to see if she wanted to talk about some announcements.
We are excited to announce that we have over 3.2 thousand followers. Thank you so much, subscribers, actually. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting. We appreciate it. We're seeing comments every week, and we're trying to get back to you either in the comment section or throughout the podcast. Thank you so much for supporting us. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for this topic. It's a good one.
All right. So, and talking about, the way our representatives are, be it state, federal, I was looking at like our state assembly members, which is similar to our federal Congress people. They serve 2 years, which means they have to immediately show value, because it's like as soon as you get in office, you got to start running. Your governor, like your president, gets 4 years. And if you look at the cycle of running, you might, if you're lucky, get 2 years to govern, and then you're running for 2 years, which means you have to immediately show value, which is why the presidents do all this, well, what I'm going to do on day one foolishness.
Right.
As a senator, you get a little bit more time because you've got 6 years, but then you also have to deal with, the other 49, I meant to say 99 senators, and so you have all of that to deal with. And so it's still hard to show value, but it's also the problem that, you're dealing with problems that didn't happen immediately and trying to fix those issues. Do you have any take on that?
I just think that we can't expect any quick changes to happen. It takes a while. And even when we come up with a plan and we start to implement it, a lot of times there's pieces in that plan that aren't good. They don't work. But just for the sake of keep going with it, because that's what the plan that we came up with, people do keep going with it. And then some parts of things end up getting worse because we're not correcting throughout the process. Like, oh, this is a really good plan overall, but this piece isn't working. We need to change it. We kind of leave it. And then we're left to deal with that problem 2, 4, 6, 10 years later. And it takes us even longer to come out of it. So I think just the idea that anything can be done quickly and that we don't have to evaluate it along the way is only going to get us into deeper trouble.
Yeah, but I think part of the problem is, how hard it is to get some of these plans in place. Just during my time in government, trying to get initiatives started and all the fights and all the, consensus building that you have to do to get an initiative going. By the time you get an initiative going, you're like exhausted. And then, trying to every couple of years go back and see, what the progress is and see where you need to make changes. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's very necessary. But one of the problems is we as voters have to be more patient with the process. And maybe if we're more patient with the process, we can get the politicians to stop making ridiculous promises. Because there's an argument to be made that the reason why they make ridiculous promises is because we force them to. Okay. Because if they don't make outlandish promises, that we won't elect them.
Yeah, I can see that. I also think that when we got to look at the type of the things we want to change, and then we have to look at how much is this something that some politician can change, and how much is it that the public can change.
Absolutely.
So we have to look at our piece and part in it. So it's not even just being patient, but also willing to do the work.
Absolutely.
Because no politician is going to fix the educational system without teachers and all the people who work in education and the parents and the students. It's not one group of people that are going to fix this. Definitely a politician's not going to. They're not even in the school in the first place. So just that idea that someone else is going to fix these problems. Then we also have to look, is this really the problem that they're telling us is the problem?
Yes.
Right? So a lot of times they're telling us, oh, it's, the teachers are not spending enough time on this, that, and the other, or the teachers are, indoctrinating, or whatever the case may be. But is that really what's happening, or is that just something to throw you off track?
Right.
Like really get in there and pay attention. What is going on? Why are students failing across the country? What is happening? Is it just like at home life is completely the same the way it's always been, and it's just the school that has changed? Like, let's be serious about what's happening. And then the idea that a politician is going to change that, I don't even think that makes sense at all. There's certain things that can get in place that helps us move along within the walls of the school, but no one from the outside is definitely going to make an impact that is going to turn everything around. This is part of what we need to do as a society, is to make sure that our kids are prepared before they even step into the school to be taught.
Yes.
There's something that needs to go on before it can happen in a really healthy way.
Right.
And that's a piece that people don't talk about enough.
Yes.
This idea that you could just drop them off and we're going to magically have everything going. I mean, if that was the case, believe me, some teachers around the country would have done this a long time ago. We're not holding back. And if you wonder why in certain areas kids are performing higher, you got to look at some things besides just what's happening in the classroom. There's other factors that are into play.
There's expectations.
There's expectations that don't have anything to do with politicians
and have nothing to do with money.
Right, exactly. Yes. So when there's a problem that we want solved, we have to really look at, like, for example, people thought for some reason like Obama was going to solve racism, right? Something that's been around for centuries. Like this one black guy was going to solve racism. Like, no, this is all of us. We all have to be in on that, right? And we also can't allow anyone to come in and make racism bigger. Like we that's on us, right? So we have to, as a society, work on that. And it's not going to be any president that's going to take it away or even put it back in there.
Right.
It's on us. No one's forcing you to be racist. No one's forcing you to be anti-racist. It's a personal choice. And when we realize that that choice and that power is in our hands, the better off we're going to be.
Right. But when you look at it, what politician would actually get elected if they said, we need the public to actually do their part?
Yeah.
If there were a politician that went down to the public schools and met with parents and said, we need for you to do more with your children, to read to your children, to be more involved with the schools, so that your children will get a better education. Will that politician get elected?
I don't know. I'd like to see a politician say something like that, right? And see if it would work, because sometimes people need to hear the message from a certain person. Otherwise, they don't hear it well. But I would like to see someone take a chance on that and ask people to do a certain thing that it's only going to benefit them, really. Yes. We're not asking people to go down to Washington and go through papers. We're asking you in your own homes, your own communities to make some changes that will definitely impact your child's education in the school. Yeah. I'm not sure why people would, look the other way for something like that. But I dare a politician. Anybody who holds any kind of position in the government or in a school system to put that out there, and let's see how that goes. Let's give that a try, because I think we do say it like in conferences, like if you do this, if you do that, but sometimes you just need to hear it from, I don't know, someone who's a higher up. I don't know what it is that people need to hear.
But they're afraid to say it. And I noticed this especially during COVID. Because during COVID, especially living out here in California, everybody talked about masks. They talked about the hospitals. They talked about the healthcare system. No one said, hey, why don't we work on getting healthier? No one said we need to be healthier, and that the healthier you are, the better capable you are at fighting any disease.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any disease. Yeah. It doesn't mean that a disease won't eventually, that can't at some point take your life. It doesn't mean that. Mm-hmm. But you're in a much better position to fight any disease, any injury, if you're in better shape.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And no one wanted to say that.
Mm-hmm. I heard it here and there, but it wasn't
not
pushed,
from a politician.
Yeah, true.
Not from a politician.
Right.
No one is going to say that. We want to talk about masks. We want to talk about healthcare. We need to do more. We need to do more, instead of saying, well, maybe the public needs to do more. We talk about crime in the streets. Can you tell me a better way of fighting crime than parents doing a better job raising kids?
I can't. I wish I could.
Tell me a better way of fighting crime than all of us as community, and not just parents doing a better job, us as communities,
right,
doing a better job with children.
Yes, including schools. Because as times change, and we have different needs in society, we have to move with that. We can't keep talking about, well, it's just reading, writing, arithmetic. Right now, we got to get the kids to be able to take that in the first place.
Absolutely.
We have to get them mentally, prepared for it. So we can't just do what we did 100 years ago, because it's not where we are in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Other than that, we're still human. Life is so completely different than 100 years ago, but yet we're trying to teach the same way we did 100 years ago. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
But yes, we have to do things differently. And I think we all kind of know that. But we do know that it's going to take a lot for us to roll up our sleeves and make changes within ourselves. It's easier to ask somebody else, well, can you fix it?
Yes. And it's funny because, and I've seen this with a lot of politicians over the past, decade or so. People say, well, I like this person because they're bold. Mm-hmm. Is that really the only thing you're looking for, is someone that is bold? Is that what's important?
Right. And if you are bold, what you're saying needs to make sense. Don't just yell out any old thing, right? Right. It's like, does this make sense? Are you asking for something that is, better for everyone?
Yes.
Something that's not going to be struck down, that you really can't do. It's not about being shocking.
Right.
Right. Which is what I think people are going for. But bold meaning like I'm bold to bring up and say some of the tough things that need to be said. Not to tear people apart, but to help them build themselves.
Yes.
It's different than just being bold and saying outlandish things.
Yes. Because what if a politician were bold enough to say, I'm going to put an initiative in effect that is not going to fix the problem now, but is going to be sustainable over future generations.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is bold. Not only that, but as we do this,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to create self-correcting mechanisms so that every year, every 2 years or whatever, we're going to look at how it's going and see if shifts need to be made,
Right.
if different parts of the program either need to be taken away or changed or whatever the case may be.
Right.
How about that kind of boldness? Can we get boldness like that?
Exactly. Right. The boldness we expect kids to do. Like, you made a mistake, that makes you grow stronger, or makes you think more, or makes you be more of a problem solver, you know? But no, we're like, no, we can't show that was a mistake. That little piece that we did, we got to keep running with it because that's what we said we would do.
Yes.
And we need everybody to be on board, even though it's not working. You know?
I mean, you look at the boldness, of like you said, and of admitting that you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the COVID response. Everybody made a mistake during the COVID response.
Right.
Everyone. Right. All of us did.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing.
We didn't know.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, look, with the information that we had, these were the decisions that we made.
Right.
As we got better information, we made better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically keep moving on that.
Right.
But politicians were afraid of being called wishy-washy or flip-floppers and all of that, instead of saying, look, as you get better information, you change your decision.
Right.
And you had some of them, and unfortunately some of them were here in California, that said, no, this was the decision I made and I'm going to stand on it. Mm-hmm. Even though as better information came in, which now made your decision not seem like such a great idea, mm-hmm. you didn't want to change because you just wanted to stand on what you now see was not a good idea.
Right.
And who would blame you for changing once you got better information?
Right. And I know for some people, it's like, oh, we spent all this money. We spent millions on this wrong thing that we're doing. And so we want to keep going with it. But it hurts us in the long run because, like we said, in order for change takes time, mm-hmm. right? So when you realize you're making a big mistake, but you keep going with it, now it's going to take so long to get out of that.
Yes.
You know, when you could have pivoted sooner.
Yes.
You know, and just people being willing to do that. Being willing, I mean, a little bit of money is going to get wasted.
Right.
That's just part of getting better, honestly.
And you see this in every part of life. I know you've seen this as a teacher. Sometimes decisions have to be made with imperfect information. Mm-hmm. But you can't afford to sit on your hands. Mm-hmm. Decisions have to be made.
Right.
But then what you do is, as you get better information, you say, oh, okay, well, that wasn't the perfect decision.
Right.
So, okay, now that I've got better information, I'm going to make a better decision.
Right.
And what we as a public have to allow, we have to make the environment more comfortable, and we have to encourage, the politicians to say, hey, okay, now that I've got better information, I'm going to make a better decision.
Right. And make sure that better information includes the voice of the people who are on the front lines.
Yes.
Because a lot of times it's like your better information is coming from someone who's not deep in it. You know, like I'm sure during the whole COVID situation, we didn't listen enough to the nurses and things that they had to say.
Yeah, they let the scientists run the response, which I thought was absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. You can't let scientists run the response because there are public policy implications to it, and you're not even thinking about that. Mm-hmm. You're letting the white coats run all of the. You can't do that. You have to look at it holistically. Mm-hmm. How does it affect the nurses?
Right.
How does it affect hospital staff as a whole?
Right.
How does it affect society? How does it affect the workers? People who are just trying to get to work every day. You have to look at it holistically. But, I come back to my point. We have to set the environment where we come to expect that from policymakers, where we expect that. When I lodge these criticisms of politicians, I'm really making criticisms of us as voters, because we set the environment. We're the ones that force anyone who runs for office to lie to us, to make these outlandish claims of what they're going to do day one, and all this kind of ridiculous mess. And, and in 2 years, I will have reversed homelessness, and I will have reversed crime, and all this kind of stuff, knowing that there's no possible way that can happen.
Right.
There's no possible way. You can't fix crime with more police.
Right. Yeah.
You can't. You can't. Now you can do certain. You can help crime with more police. I do agree there. But if you want something that's sustainable, the only way to fix crime is to fix communities.
Yes.
You have to fix the problems that create crime.
Right.
If you're going to do that. And there's no way you're going to do that in a 2-year term, or a 4-year term, or a 6-year term. It's not going to happen.
And let's be honest about what we're doing to voters. Like, I mean, right? So you turn 18 and you can vote. But have you been taught all of this? Haven't you been given the chance to think on your own, to have the information presented to you and come up with your own ideas? No. Like, it's very calculated what you're going to learn in school and who you're going to talk about, who we're going to talk about, especially TK to 12.
Yes.
Who is going to be discussed, what's going to be discussed, how it's going to be discussed, right? And that's going to impact you when you step out in the society on your own. It's time to vote and make decisions and do all the things that we do once we're turned away from our parents.
Yes.
And people are not going out prepared to do that.
No, they're not.
The school system has got to prepare people to make better decisions in life, from voting to all the other things that we have to deal with.
Yes.
So that's another thing to think about. So like, we kind of control the school system and what's going to be said and not said, and everything. And it's probably worse than ever right now.
Yes, it is.
And
it is.
We're going to turn out people who are going to be unprepared and think that someone else is going to have the problem. They don't realize that they also have the solution.
Yes.
We have the solution to how we want this society to be.
Yes.
Right. And so, but we're not empowering our kids. Right. We're not empowering people to grow up and realize that.
Yes.
So especially in certain areas, right? I mean, the better off you do in school.
Yes.
The conversations and your experience in school are different. But if you're kind of low performing, there is no, people feel there's no time to have those conversations. It's like, we just got to drill and kill, or, you know what I mean? Right. So, and so those kids miss out on certain things.
Yes, they do.
To be thinkers. And that's something else politicians, I'd like to hear them talk about.
Right. The
impact of the way and what we teach, how that impacts society later on, especially a certain portion of society.
Yes.
Because they're not having those experiences with all different kinds of people from all walks of life and all backgrounds to help them through all of the, mud that we sling in the US. So I think that's a huge part of the problem is, again, I put a lot of it on us as citizens.
Yes.
And I mean, families at home can have these conversations with their families. Once you know better, do better. That's not just for the politicians, but that's also for all of us.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And so you think about it, if you don't like who's in the Oval Office now, then you've got to figure out what you're going to do within your community to help your community. If you didn't like who was in the Oval Office previously, it's the same thing. Either way, whether you like who's in office or not, it's still up to you to do your part.
Right.
Because there's only but so much they can do.
Right.
To fix the situation that you're in. Ultimately, it's up to you. And what we need to be doing, we need to change the questions that we're asking. what if we went to these town halls and to these debates and started asking questions such as, how can we team up with you to fix this problem, as opposed to what are you going to do to fix crime in the streets? And it's like, what do you mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's such a ridiculous question when you go to one person and say, what are you going to do to fix crime?
Right.
What are you going to do to solve homelessness? What are you going to do to educate my kid?
Right.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
That means they're going to do something very extreme that in a few years we're going to go, oh my God, that was too extreme. And we're going to go all the way back the other way. And we just keep bouncing back and forth, instead of finding something along the way in the middle that works. We're just going to keep going from one end to the other, and that's kind of how education goes as well. But if you stay in it long enough, you'll see that happen. Yeah. Instead of like, okay, both of these things are important. We need to work together. When these things need to go in tandem. So,
and you look at how we went at with presidents. You start off with, like, I go back to the first president that I knew of as a child was Jimmy Carter. And mainly because he came from Georgia and I was originally from Georgia, and then it went to Ronald Reagan, and then of course to the first Bush 41. But then from Bush 41, it went to Bill Clinton. So you went from Republican to Democrat, and then from Clinton, from Clinton it went to Bush 43, and then of course from Bush 43. Then you swing over to Obama. Then from Obama, you swing over to Trump. Then from Trump, you swing over to Biden. Then from Biden, you swing back over to Trump.
Right.
And you see this pendulum swing. And so you look at this constant regime change every 4 years. How do you plan on solving any problem when you're constantly swinging polarity like this? It doesn't make sense. And so if people could just take a deep breath and say, what are the problems we need to solve and how do we do it in a way that's sustainable? Not figuring out how we're going to solve it next week, because we're not going to solve it next week. Crime, poverty, homelessness, education, none of these problems happened in a week.
Right.
They're not going to be solved in a week. I have to look at this even within myself. Here I am trying to lose weight. I didn't gain all this weight, in a week. I'm not going to lose it in a week.
Right.
So I have to exercise every day. I have to watch what I eat every day and realize that I'm going to have to do this for the long haul in order to get myself more healthy. That's what we need to do as Americans, is that we have to say every day what it's going to take to get us more healthy. And that's going to be more sustainable than these fad diets that, and I've tried a few of them, these quick hits and let's see how we can do it, because it never works. It never works. You want to solve crime? Let's get guns off the street. Okay. Well, then you end up taking guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, and the criminals have all the guns, and now you've just made crime worse.
Right.
Right. Or how do you solve education? Well, let's put this new curriculum in because teachers are the problem. It's not the problem that the kids come to school, so far behind. That's not the problem.
Or even that the curriculum could be not the best. But what I want to say, what I appreciate, this makes me think of it, about my principal, is that she's asked us to look at some essential standards or essential things that we know kids need all along the way.
Yeah.
And really not that we're ignoring all the other things, we're still doing them, but really put our energy towards those things that are going to carry them.
Right.
And that, I think, makes a huge difference. Sometimes some teachers know that that's what you have to do, and others need to hear it from the top in order to be like, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to do it. And I think it's helping. I mean, of course it's going to be gradual, right? We're not going to be like, everyone's going to be above grade level, but it is helping the kids honing into the best parts they really need and making that difference. And also trusting that we are doing that work. She's trusts us as teachers to get this work done. She's not like hovering over us about it, you know? Hey, this is the work that she's holding us accountable. This is the work we constantly checking in and all of that. But putting it in our hands and saying, I trust you. You're the professionals. You know what to do. This is what we all agreed on that we're going to work on. And we're looking at it and we're seeing a difference instead of just trying to do everything at once, which is impossible, honestly.
Right.
And expecting all of this change to happen.
Yes.
You know, so I think we have to do the same thing. Keep in mind, like, let's do some of the most important things that are going to carry us further. So that's going to take some examination of what those things are.
Yes.
And then really go hard on it and work on it consistently.
Absolutely.
And have a little patience too.
Yes.
And just take note if you see those changes happening, right? And if they're not, after a period of time, okay, what do we need to tweak, right? What do we need to do? What's working over here that's not working here? Like, just taking the time to do that work instead of like, okay, you're going to do this big, huge thing. Go do it. And what? It's not fixed.
Right.
No, right. It just doesn't go that way. Right. What goes that way? Nothing goes that way.
Nothing.
Right. Maybe you take your car in and you expect when you pick it up, it's fixed. Right. That's different.
Right.
But we're trying to change things. We're trying to change mindsets.
Yes.
Right. We're trying to change practices.
We're trying to change communities.
Yes. We're talking about millions of people.
Yes.
It's not going to happen so quickly. And us expecting it to is actually just damaging ourselves, I think. You know? And we're in a quick fix society right now. And, you know, Instagram's quick and TikTok's quick. Everything's quick. Well, I learned in 1 minute something I never knew my whole life. That's exciting, right? Yes. But let's just be honest that life isn't that way.
Yeah. And just real quick, gotta real quick get on my soapbox about the day one stuff that I was talking about. And this is not just about our current president, but probably the last 4 or 5 presidents at least, is with the day one executive orders. For people who go crazy about the day one executive orders, I challenge you to actually look through them, because what happens, and each president's done this. I'm not just trying to put this on President Trump, but but if you go through the past probably 4 or 5 presidents, they've done this. What they do is they undo the executive orders from the previous president, whether they worked or not, because they had the previous president's name on it. Right. And we don't want to do that. And see how many of their new executive orders are a copy and paste of the previous presidents, but just have their name on it. And I'm going to tell you, you'll be surprised how many of those executive orders are the exact same, but they're just a copy and paste. And it was like, well, I got rid of that guy's little stupid executive order, and I created my own. And you'll look at it; it's the same thing. Yeah. It's the same thing. Right. It's petty. It's ridiculous. And like I said, I'm not just trying to blame the current president, because so many other presidents I liked did it too. So, I'm being even-handed with this. Right. This is something that gets done. But I just really think that as we get more realistic, because I hear people complaining about, politicians lie, but I think sometimes we force them to lie. We demand that they lie, because if they tell the truth, we won't elect them. If the politician actually said, here's what I'd like to do, it's not going to fix the problem in 2 years. It may take 10 to 15 years to gradually actually fix the problem, but it'll be sustainable, something that'll have lasting change. And I need your help as a public to actually make this happen. I don't see how that person would ever get elected. So we have to ask ourselves, are we demanding that they lie? And I really think that we are. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves, are we the problem?
We're definitely a part of it. That's for sure. We're definitely a part of it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, politicians are just people. Right?
They are.
They're not like these superheroes.
They are.
They're just people.
They're definitely not superheroes. Yeah, they've proven that over time that they are not superheroes. Right. So I think we need to ask those questions, and at some point start figuring out, are we giving certain politicians enough time to even make changes? I think that the terms of the state assembly people in California, as well as Congress people, federal Congress people. I think a 2-year term is just absolutely ridiculous because the moment you're sworn in, you're fundraising. It's like it's immediate. It's immediate, and so I think that's pretty ridiculous. They should probably get at least 4 years. But these are things that we need to figure out as a populace how we're going to do these things. But I think that we need to be more realistic about what our part to play is, and asking our political officials to do their part to clear the way for us to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we want everyone to ask, like, what can I do? What can I do?
Yes.
To see the world that I want.
Yes.
What part do I play, and what can I do? Not everyone can go out there and, fly to Sacramento or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But, ask yourself, have I ever been to a board meeting? Have I ever been to a town hall meeting? Have I ever, volunteered and done any of this work and heard for myself what goes on, as opposed to the soundbite,
yes.
On media? Ask yourself that. And
absolutely.
Do something about it. Even if it's just like once every, 3 months, like just do something, right? If we all did that, things would be different.
Yeah. But I also want to say real quick, I do feel for people who live in tough circumstances, who live in, whether it's a violent neighborhood, or who have substandard schools, people who have lost family members to COVID, or who have dealt with some of the residual effects of COVID or the vaccines.
Yeah.
I believe that what they want is legitimate. I really do feel for them. I just think that if we're going to do this in a way that is sustainable long term, there's just no fast way to do it. That's the problem. And we can't expect someone who we don't know to fix it for us. It's just, there's unrealistic expectations. And we talk about, the way politicians used to be. Let me tell you, politicians back then weren't doing it either. It's just that we didn't have the internet in order to see what they weren't doing.
Right. And I remember all the fighting and name calling and ridiculousness.
Yeah.
It seemed a little more serious back then. Now I'm like, am I watching a reality show?
we didn't get a chance to see how much they weren't doing back then. So we assumed that back then they were solving problems.
Right.
But no. It just wasn't as televised.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't in social media.
Yeah. Right. Because we're dealing with a lot of the same things, just
absolutely.
a new name, right?
Absolutely.
From crack to fentanyl, right?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and meth.
And before that, it was freebase. Back in the day.
Right.
So I think that we've talked this through. Do you have anything left?
I don't. I think that we've said what we've had to say, and now it's up to the people. Hear what you have to say out there.
Yeah. So, talk to your friends and family about this. And as you're yelling and screaming about whoever, politician or whatever, look at yourself here and there, and look at your friends and family and say, are we expecting too much from the politicians? Are there things that we should be doing? And are what politicians doing, is any of this absolutely sustainable? Just ask yourself the question.
Yeah. Ask yourself the question, and ask your family and friends the question as well.
Absolutely. So for this 37th episode of Love, Growth, and Narratives, I'm Frederick.
And I'm Tiffany.
Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.